Two dicks, wow.
Yeah! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast.
And having to go, yeah, but he did kind of do this.
What I'm hearing is you just want Tom Brady dead. Like that's all I'm hearing at this point. You just want Brady dead.
Well, not anymore. He's retired now, so I'm good with that. I don't want him calling games anymore because holy hell, he's hard to listen to.
Enough angry and, depressing from myself. Sterling, thank you for being able to sit there as my therapist for this episode.
Start the game already!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast. Brendan and Sterling coming back to you. Last week it was our mock draft 2.0, and unfortunately we didn't really have time to do a proper podcast after that. So this is gonna kind of be that. So we're gonna be talking Super Bowl, we're gonna be talking Combine, we're gonna be talking some free agency here. There's lot of stuff that we can kind of jump into. But first off, buddy, how are you doing on this cold Saturday?
Not too bad. It's not as cold as it was all week, so that's a nice change. At least the temperature's trending upwards, but I'm done with winter.
Oh, you and me both.
Yeah.
Very, very cold. My bald head was not enjoying that.
Right? But yeah, we're kind of in that first little dead zone that we get after the Super Bowl. Not a whole lot of new news other than, what happened in the Super Bowl. There's been talks about the Combine coming up. I think that's in
Starts
10, 12 days, something like that.
Oh no, it's next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then free agency soon after that.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of stuff that could be talked about here. The Combine, I think, starts off on Tuesday this week, February 23rd to March 2nd. So all the stuff. Oh yeah, so it's like this upcoming week. So it's
starts this week. I thought it was next week.
Yeah. So we won't start to see anything on like the TV side of things until I want to say like Thursday.
Yeah.
I'll have to kind of...
most of the first couple days is like the interviews and things like that. The tests they give. Yeah.
So it's kind of that. But obviously, Super Bowl happened and Patriots ended up losing to the Seattle Seahawks, which I think both of us kind of looked at that and went, that's probably the way that Super Bowl was going to go. It was just kind of an ass kicking from Seattle. It honestly exposed the Patriots for what they were.
Yeah, and what I had been saying they were all season long. They had a weak schedule all through the regular season, and then just luck of the draw throughout a lot of the playoffs as well, facing injured quarterbacks and injured teams. Sure, they were able to get it done, but oftentimes it was while not scoring a whole lot of points. And so that was something that I kind of expected to see out of the Patriots, and the Seahawks just absolutely decimated them. But it was a boring game, unfortunately, and usually I'm usually the guy that's like, I like it low scoring. I like defense. And sure, there was a lot of defense, but it wasn't the exciting kind of defense I like to see. Not interceptions. There weren't a bunch of fumbles or huge sacks. They were just comfortable sacks. A lot of pressure on the quarterbacks, a lot of throw away the ball and 3 and outs. And it's like, that was just boring.
Yeah, it was one of those playoff games where you just kind of watched it and went, man, like one defense is playing unbelievable right now and the other defense is playing really good football, but at least it's one of those things where, one team is starting to like see what the other team is doing and starting to adjust to what they can. While the other team, it was just like, this is what we're doing. This is all we can do. And away we go. And it was a boring game. Like that particular Sunday, I had called 3 hockey games before I even got home. So I was a little bit late watching the Super Bowl, but I was listening to it the entire way that I was driving home. And so I was exhausted, and watching that game, it was like, man, it was just not entertaining whatsoever. It was genuinely one of those games I sat down and I was like, I feel like I wasted my afternoon and evening.
Yeah, I'm surprised after calling those 3 games that the game didn't put you to sleep, honestly. And like I said to a few guys, the week after they were talking about it, some of them were like, "Oh, that was such a good game." And I was like, "Man, no." Like I saw better Thursday night football games this season than that was.
Yeah. I know us at work, we were hanging out in our little corner before one of our meetings, and one of the guys that we are not technically the biggest fan of comes up to us. What a game that was this weekend. We both just slowly turn and go, no.
What game were you watching?
Yeah. Were you just referring to the halftime show that, you know, for the most part, I think unless you're someone who is just extremely mega, essentially, you thought
Yeah.
was fine, because
Yeah,
the
I
way
mean, it probably the most exciting part of the entire Super Bowl because, at least it was upbeat and, had people awake.
yeah, like I'll say this: did I particularly care for the halftime show? No, but I also understand that's halftime show was not meant for me. I, you know,
Right?
I was tired.
I
I
enjoyed it.
didn't
I
care.
didn't understand a word of it, but
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
yeah. If I was less tired while watching that game, I
Yep.
probably would have enjoyed it more. But I sat back and I was like, listen, this one was never designed for me in mind. So I'm just gonna sit back and go, it is what it is, and hopefully people that it was designed for enjoyed it. And everyone who I talked to seemed to enjoy it. So,
Yep.
and yeah, it was a rough game. But the thing that I want to talk about for this is kind of the Patriots run. And we have mentioned before on the podcast of their regular season, of where it was only facing they only faced 3 teams the entire season that didn't make drastic changes to their coaching staff, either being firing their head coach, firing their OC or DC, or firing all 3. That
Hmm.
was during the regular season. You go into the playoffs, you go up against the Chargers, who I know a lot of us, I know you particularly hate when I start talking about the Chargers like this. It's always the what if, the what if. But
Hmm.
here's the thing: is that with the Chargers, if they had both of their tackles, they win that game. You give Justin Herbert a little bit of time to throw that ball, they win, because that game only 16-3.
Yep. Oh, 100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I felt the same way about the Broncos game. Bo Nix is playing that game. They're only down by 4 in the fourth quarter. How many times this season did we see Bo Nix go, I got this? And he had it. The Broncos were known this season for fourth quarter comebacks, being down by a score or even more. There were times they were down by like 17 points and came back in the fourth quarter because Bo Nix would just be like, okay, I play football now, Sean. It's good now. I do what I want. Yeah. And he would win.
Yeah. Well,
You know?
and just going to that second week of the playoffs, you talked about the Houston game. They were playing the Texans. If CJ Stroud didn't have a generationally bad football game, if
Mhm.
if he had just played average quarterback play, like I'm talking right down the middle of the pack, average quarterback play in that football game, the Texans win that football game.
Mhm.
Because the Texans defense was playing so well, and it was just to the point where it's like, CJ, you got to stop throwing interceptions in our own zone. We can't be out there all the goddamn time. You talked about it. The Broncos game, the Patriots only won 10-7. Like, if Bo Nix is in there, the Patriots lose that football game. And it probably would have been like a 14-10 game, because again, the weather conditions were just horrific in that one. But it just showed that the Seahawks going out there, it was Sam Darnold just playing average quarterback play in that one. And you
Mhm.
saw Drake May kind of get exposed a little bit, where it was, if you can apply pressure to Drake May, he didn't really have an answer for it. And I
No.
know myself as a Chicago Bears fan, I sat back watching that game going, how would have Caleb done in that scenario? How would the Bears have done in that scenario with their offense against that defense? I went, they would have done a fuck lot better than what we saw from the Patriots. I'll tell you that. Now, do I think the Bears would have won that game? Probably not. The defense is for the Bears was just not good enough to compete. And the Patriots defense is better than the Bears. But I sat back and went, Caleb wouldn't have looked that, discombobulated while playing it. He would have been able to escape. He would have been able to find guys that were open. Hell, he might have thrown a couple of interceptions from what we saw during the playoffs, but he would have looked more comfortable than what we saw from Drake May. Now, Drake May in the game against the Broncos was 10 for 21 for 86 yards. In this game, he was 27 for 43 for 295 yards, with most of those yards coming in the fourth quarter when the game was so far out of hand that it was basically the Seattle defense just going to a base defense and going like, oh, look at you, buddy. You got some yardage. Yay.
Well, yeah, that was exactly it. Once it got out of hand there in I think it was late third quarter or so, that Seattle just sort of rested back and we're like, whatever. Even if you do score, we're just going to hand the ball off to Kenneth Walker because you have not been able to stop him, and he's just going to run the clock and run the ball. And it just they didn't have an answer for that Seahawks defense, or for Kenneth Walker for that matter. It's it was shocking because they had the opportunity. Early on, JSN goes down with concussion symptoms, ends up in the blue tent, and doesn't get to come back into that game. And that was the playmaker for this Seahawks team all season. So you lose Jackson Smith-Njigba, and you got to look at that if you're Mike Vrabel and go, this is our game now. We got to win this. And they just still did nothing.
Well, even in the early stages of that game when Jackson Smith-Njigba, before that, it was like, okay, Kenneth Walker on that first drive, and then you saw Sam Darnold make a couple of passes where you're like, ooh, okay, but he also made a couple of passes where you're like, that's exactly what you need to do. And it was Kenneth Walker just going out there and just essentially controlling the pace of that game. And it's he won Super Bowl MVP, rightfully so. He was probably the best offensive player for the Seahawks. I know a lot of people kind of sat back and went, it felt like you should have given it to one of the defenders for the Seahawks because they played so well. Honestly, the Super Bowl MVP should have just been the Seattle Seahawks defense.
Yeah,
like
it really should have been, and I saw another interesting point too. Like I don't think it should have been him, but there were a lot of people calling for the kicker because really early in the game, he was the one that was leading the charge, getting all the points. It was just field goal after field goal. And it was interesting that you can't even vote for a kicker to be MVP, which is a little bit bizarre. Just because what if we do have one of those games where it's like an 18-15 final and it's just all field goals? Like at that point, one of those kickers should get the MVP. So that's something I would like to see the NFL change, just so that it can be included in the voting. Not even to be able to vote for a kicker is bizarre.
Yeah, well, like I even jokingly said to you, I said, if anything, the punter for the Seahawks should have been Super Bowl MVP because he just laid some money punts down where it's like, okay, we're already putting the Patriots in really, really bad position against our really good defense. Like, have fun. Like, there you go.
Luck.
And we could spend, an hour talking about this game, but obviously it's kind of like a little bit of a week pass, so there's no point in kind of opening up some of that stuff. But it does kind of go back to show that I think both of us were kind of right in what we saw from the Patriots. Patriots were a good team this year. There's no denying it. But when you play a historically bad schedule, and then it is easy to look good. And
what I will say about the Patriots is I do expect them to continue to grow and learn from this. Like that was a great first year for Mike Vrabel. Great growth for the Patriots this year. It's got to worry Bills fans, Bills brass. It's got to concern the Jets and the Dolphins as well, because the Patriots are on the rise yet again. And as long as they have a decent offseason, through free agency, through the draft, get some weapons for Drake May, maybe bolster that offensive line a little bit more, we are going to see the Patriots continue to thrive and grow with likely a more difficult schedule coming up. Will they go, what was it, 12 wins? I don't think so. But I think they will still be in the hunt for a playoff spot come week 15, 16, 17 next year.
Yeah, what I expect to see from the Patriots is I think they're actually going to be a better team on paper next season with a worse record. Because the problem is you now have to go into that first place schedule. And you look at how they performed on the road this year, where they were spectacular on the road this season. The road teams that they're going to have to face this upcoming season is going to be that much more difficult. And I think in that case, it's going to make this team have a couple more losses this season or this upcoming season as opposed to this season. Even though they're going to have a better roster, they're going to be a better, more complete team, which is kind of hilarious to look at. And you just have to wonder, man, if you're the Patriots, was this the chance for you guys that you're just seeing it go off into the wind? Because we know the Chiefs are going to be better next year because you're going to see the Chiefs be better. You're going to see the Bills probably be back. You're going to see the Ravens be more improved. Like these are teams that you expect to be in that hunt that just weren't there this year. Hell, we're going to likely see the Bengals be even better next year because Joe Burrow, he had his injury this year. Next year, we know he kind of goes on these cycles of 1 year it's good, 1 year it's injured. Joe Burrow goes back out there. He's going to have an MVP-like season next season. And so you kind of had some of the juggernauts that aren't usually there likely making their way back this season.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's going to be much more difficult for the Patriots to get there. And we'll see improvements from other teams. The Broncos will be better. I expect CJ Stroud and the Texans to hopefully improve. I was really shocked with CJ Stroud. I expected after that loss for them to come out and go, oh yeah, he had like a torn or just a damaged finger or something on his throwing hand, and that's why he was so off and had to have surgery. I was really expecting to see something like that, some legitimate reasoning for why he played so horribly through those 2 playoff games. But there wasn't. Nope. So, I don't know. But yeah, there's going to be a lot more competition for the Patriots to get back to the big game next year. I don't think they get there. And I agree. I think the record will be worse than what they had this year. I just still think it'll be fighting for one of those wild card spots. Or depending on what the Bills do, they may still be fighting for that division because, the Bills have seen some changes in their front office that were likely incorrect, a lot of us feel like. The wrong guy was removed from head coach as opposed to the general manager, and I think it's just going to be run it back the same way, and it'll be struggles for the Bills.
Yeah, I think, honestly, the Patriots are a team that could probably still win that division next year. Like when I say I think they're going to be a better team on paper but have a worse record, that's not saying that they won't win the division. Like that's still a good team. Like they could theoretically lose one more game and that's still technically a worse record than it was the year prior to, even with a better team. But yeah, I don't think either of us sit back and think that this Patriots team is gonna just up and disappear like what we saw from the Commanders, because this is a different team. It's a better run team. And it's going to be really interesting. But obviously, that was the Super Bowl. We give the credit to Seattle. They did a phenomenal job. Combine is up and coming here in the next couple of days. I know for us, we love the idea of the Combine because we get to see, fast guy run fast, big guy lift muscle, or big guy lift weight many times. I always like to try to look at the Combine from someone who likes to do scouting type stuff. it's more of just like a confirmation of what you see on tape versus more than anything. Like, for instance, if you see a guy like a wide receiver run a 4.5 and you're like, oh, I think he actually runs a little bit faster on tape. Like,
Mhm.
someone brought up a really good point. We saw Joe Flacco this year run 18.5 miles per hour on a play, which if you were to put that over a 40-yard dash, that would have been like a 4.4 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, game speed and just running on, a field are two very, very different things. And
Well, yeah, I mean, you take in momentum and adrenaline into that factor. Something like the combine, you don't have momentum in a 100-yard dash because you're going from dead stop to a run, and you don't have that adrenaline because sure, your draft position is on the line, but that's kind of it. Whereas within a game, you know, as you're running down the field, typically you will pick up speed untouched, and then that adrenaline starts going, and that's when you see guys like the Tyreek Hills or even the old guys like the Joe Flacco hit another gear, and all of a sudden the Jets go, and you're like, God damn, how do you get around that corner and up the field? You don't see that in the combine. So sure, the numbers are fun to watch, but like you said, you're right. It's almost confirmation of what you see on the tape. It's like, okay, he ran fast. I've seen him run faster on the tape, and so he very likely will be a speedster within the NFL season.
yeah, well, and the other thing is, I don't like the combine for when we see quarterbacks, because there's so many times where I've seen people in the media go like, oh, you know what, that quarterback had a really, really good combine. He was making really good throws. He looked really impressive. And it's like, he goes from being a guy that was like a 5th-round pick to a 3rd-round pick. Like, I go back to the year where we saw Malik Willis come out of Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
And Malik Willis had a great combine. And people were talking about him jumping up into the 1st round and being the 1st overall pick in that draft. I was like, guys, did none of you watch the fucking tape of him playing college football? He was not very good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I get that there is the situation of going like, okay, there's potential there. And I certainly said that to myself as well. Yeah, there's potential right there. But if I'm just going based off of, what I saw on tape, I'm not drafting that guy because he made so many mistakes in college. Now, I know continued development, you can get better, but
Mm-hmm.
why would I risk my GM job? And hell, the Titans drafted him in the 3rd round, and a year later, like, go away, please. And
Right. That's just it. Like the combine, it really is a show of the raw skills and abilities that these guys have at all the positions. It's like, okay, this is what they can do completely unobstructed, completely unfettered. They can do these things. And that's why often there are the like knowledge-based questionnaires and little interview exams that they do during the combine as well, because they also want to test these guys' intelligence and ability to learn and adapt, because that is such a key factor to developing those skills and honing them to be able to utilize them in a game situation. And so that's why sometimes you will see a guy who maybe on the tape or even in the combine doesn't impress 100%, but then you hear, well, but he interviewed really well,
Yeah.
which tells you that, okay, he's going to be a sponge for the coaching staff, and he's just going to get better and better and better because he's really good at learning how to perfect those skills. And that's why it's so important there, because we see others that it's on tape, they look great, and then they have a phenomenal combine, but all these teams look at it and go, yeah, but we were talking to him and it wasn't great. And so that some of those guys are already kind of at that ceiling. And so they're going to come in and maybe light the league on fire for a season. And then everybody's going to figure out how to shut them down, and they can't adapt.
well, that's just it. For me, I was going to eventually get to this point when I talk about the combine. What I'm really looking for is not necessarily the numbers, but what I'm hearing from teams talking about this player. For instance, is like I want to see who the Chicago Bears are interviewing at the combine, because it's
Mhm.
one of those things where I sit back and I go, okay, this tells me kind of where they're leaning towards in the draft, but it also tells me what they're leaning towards in terms of what free agency might happen. Because if they're interviewing a ton of edge rushers, obviously I think they should be, that
Mhm.
tells me, okay, they understand that the edge rushing position is a problem, and that's probably where they're going to lean to. Maybe not in the first round, but potentially in the second round, and all those sort of things. And so it's basically just sitting back going, like, it's not necessarily the week of the combine where you get to hear all the sexy juicy details. It's kind of like the week after, going like, oh, you know what, like, let's just say the Cardinals interviewed so and so, and you know what, we everyone kind of had this perception of this player, and it was, this guy is really really cool, and then it's the
Mhm.
Cardinals going, well, we interviewed him and he was kind of a dick, so you know, like, we kind of taken him off of our board here at the moment. Like, if it's at this point, then yeah. And that's kind of where all the Shador Sanders stuff was last year. It was, I'm not
Yep.
going to go throw out the combine. And, you know, it's basically just watch my tape. Now, again, I think the last thing quarterbacks should do is throw at the combine. I I just don't think it's necessary, because again, you put yourself in a position of where you can get hurt by not having the chemistry with some of the guys out there. And I think if you are going to throw, it should just be at your pro day, because what's the point of risking someone else doing that? And again, I just don't think a quarterback throwing at a combine or a pro day really matters all that much, because it's scripted throws where you know exactly what's going to happen, where people are supposed to be, and you're not being pressured by defensive linemen. The corner or the wide receiver isn't being pressured by safeties or corners,
Yep.
and there's no advanced coverages. I just want to hear what is coming out. And going back to what I was saying, again, ADHD brain here, Shador Sanders last year, it was every single team was basically sitting back going, you know, we interviewed him and he was kind of incredibly arrogant and cocky for what we should be. Hell, the Ravens said we were going to draft him in the third round, and we said, listen,
Mhm.
we really like you. We think you can be an excellent player for our team. We want you to back up Lamar Jackson. And he laughed, and it was like, okay, looks like you're not going to be drafted to us in the third.
Nope. No, because that's just it. He hurt his own stock by essentially telling the teams, like, look, if you're drafting me, I have to be the starter.
Yeah,
And
which,
nobody wanted that, like except for apparently the Cleveland Browns.
well, and the insane part about the Cleveland Browns is that they had drafted a quarterback prior to in that draft, and they sat back and went, it's the fifth round, why not? And it was kind of the owner basically just going, just take the kid, we'll see what happens. And frankly, he was the better quarterback out of the two that they drafted, and he is
Yep.
likely their starting quarterback moving forward into next season, which
Yeah,
is
so I mean, he did end up getting what he wanted. Just unfortunately, it was
with
for
the
the
Cleveland
Cleveland
Browns.
Browns.
Yep, the most.
And so good fucking luck, buddy. But I mean that's just it. That's where, like you said, the quarterback position, the interviews are almost the more important, the more telling part. And like it's fun with like the combine, the interviews leading up to the draft. It's almost like watching like an F1 like race ticker,
Mm,
and you lay out your draft board during the combine. You're like, oh yeah, this guy, I like this. And then as the interview news comes out, you see a guy drop 10 places and another one raise up 5. And
yeah,
that's sort of what it feels like you're doing when going through all of that from a scouting standpoint. Is you're very much just shuffling that board up and down, trying to find that sweet spot for when draft day comes, and knowing we have to reach for this guy if we want him, because he's going to go before our pick in the fourth round. So we have to take him third round, and things like that. And who are we taking ultimately with that first round pick? Because it still blows my mind a little bit how long some of these teams think about that first round pick when they're coming up. I'm sure some of it is the NFL going, don't put it in too fast. We want to build the suspense, because really You should be going into that draft day one, with your first round pick going, okay, this is the guy we want, and these are our two backups. And you have to be sure that there's no way all three of those guys are going to be off the board before they get to you. You have your surefire guy you want. You have your number two that it's like, okay, maybe he'll go, but if he doesn't, that's who we got. And then you grab a third guy where you're like, okay, well, he's probably an early second rounder, but that's who we need to get if we miss out on our first two.
Yeah, when it comes to those sort of things, the way that it typically is structured for like the NFL is basically the pick goes up, and I think most teams wait like 2 or 3 minutes just to see if they're gonna get any calls for trades and be like, okay, let's hear some things out. Just again, like for instance, like let's say this year the Raiders jump up to the podium. They know they're taking Fernando Mendoza.
Mhm.
But they're still gonna sit there for like 5 or 6 minutes because maybe, just maybe, a team like the New York Jets gets a little bit too high on paint and
Yep.
they're like, we'll give you all the first round picks that we accumulated for this year and next year. And the Raiders go, okay, sure.
Right?
I know when the Bears drafted Caleb Williams a couple seasons ago, the NFL straight up told Ryan Poles and the Bears, you have to wait 5 minutes before submitting the pick. And they were like, okay, fine. Because you could even hear, like, in the phone interview, Ryan Poles is like, yep, they told me to wait. He's like, I figured. Too bad. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's just it. Because the Caleb Williams one, we knew weeks before the draft that was who the pick was going to be.
Yep.
Which I think the NFL was very upset about because they like that suspense, they like that drama. But when you've got such a lock at number one, what do you expect? You can still have excitement and drama further down the road. Hell, we had it by pick 8 where all of a sudden the Falcons took Michael Penix Jr. when they had just signed Kirk Cousins to a long-term lucrative deal. And so that created that drama they wanted because all of a sudden it's like that just threw a wrench into everything. And all of a sudden guys started falling a little bit out of order the rest of that first round.
Well, not only that, but just look, if you want to talk about the Falcons, their situation with their draft pick where they traded their first round pick to go get James Pierce Jr., and that ultimately turns into a top 15 pick for the Rams. They might not have James Pierce Jr., and so that's going to be talked about in this year's draft. The other funny thing that could also happen is after the combine, after the pro day for Indiana, we might just see the Raiders just straight up sign Fernando Mendoza because technically speaking, the team with the first overall pick, they can submit their pick whenever they want. They can sign Fernando Mendoza if they want. The NFL would likely be incredibly pissed off at that. And I know that was something that the Chicago Bears were having a lot of conversations about with Caleb Williams. It was, you can just go out there and sign him, and you already gave him your playbook, so it's not like it really matters at this point. But it would be so goddamn funny to see the Raiders after the pro day for Indiana. I don't know when that is, but just, you see Tom Brady with a piece of paper in his hand walking up to Mendoza right as soon as his pro day ends and goes, sign right here, young man. Goes, okay, puts a Raiders hat on him and then just walks away. And you just see the entire NFL just go, did they just like announce their pick? And it's going to be Roger Goodell walking up on draft day. And the draft is open. The Raiders pick Fernando Mendoza and the New York Jets are on the clock.
Yeah.
Like that's essentially the way that would ultimately go. The Raiders aren't going to do that, but they're going to be good little corporate boys for the NFL.
Yeah, I mean most of the teams are. You don't want to upset the league office in most cases, so that's probably what will happen. But Tom Brady is the type of guy that I could see doing something like that just to be like, haha.
Yeah, it would basically just be like, hey guys, so
right? Remember me when I was deflating balls? Now I'm deflating your viewership.
It wouldn't deflate the viewership. All it would have is the Raiders fans just going, hey, we did this. And the NFL would likely fine them like $1 million or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, you can't do much more than that. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, it is a foregone conclusion, most of us feel, unless something dramatic and drastic happens around Fernando Mendoza throughout the pro day, the combine, the interviews and stuff like that. You know, unless it comes out that somehow he's been hiding this Shadur Sanders-esque personality, then we see something. But I really don't think so. Everything we've seen from the guy shouts that he has that integrity and he's going to be one of those good quarterbacks to have. And so I see nothing that is hinting that he could fall from that number 1 pick spot.
I agree. Now, do I think he will be the number 1 pick that technically goes to the Raiders? I'm not entirely certain in that. Mainly because, again, I'm going to spoil a upcoming podcast for you. Next week, we are planning to do basically like a full rebuild for the Raiders of how we would potentially try to go about that. One of the things that I've been sitting back and thinking about, I don't know if the Raiders should draft Fernando Mendoza.
Hmm.
I think they should trade with the Jets or trade with another team to get a haul of draft picks. Because Fernando Mendoza is good. He is. I think he is a good quarterback. I think he's on the same level as a Jared Goff type prospect. But those guys can bust. Like it's not like we're looking at a guy like Joe Burrow or Caleb Williams where it's like this is just such a surefire thing that you can feel comfortable with that. I look at the Raiders and go, you have so many issues. You are, think about it. If the Jets were to, and I was talking to my old man about this, who is a Raiders fan, and I said, if the New York Jets say we are going to offer you pick 2 and pick 17 this year, we'll offer you a first round pick in next year's draft and a second round pick in this year's draft with a third round pick in next year's draft as well. If you're the Raiders, you have to take that because here's the thing. Going to that second pick, you still have whoever you want in the draft. That could be an Arvell Reese. That could be the best offensive lineman. You could develop that offensive. Like you could essentially look at that and go, okay, with pick 2 and pick 17, we're going to take 2 O linemen. And then with our 2 second round picks, we're going to add to our defense or add a wide receiver here. And then going into next year's draft, it's not like the Raiders are going to be that much better of a team anyways. You're going to have a top 5 pick. So that tells me in a class where you're going to have potentially 6 quarterbacks in the first round, you are going to have really good odds at getting probably an even better prospect. And hell, like let's just say they have the 3rd pick next year and Dante Moore is the 3rd best quarterback in the draft class. That's still a really damn good quarterback prospect, but you have a better roster for that prospect to come in and play with.
Oh, I agree 100%. Like that is what I would do as the Raiders. The only caveat would be that's a trade that would have to get done almost pre-free agency so that the Raiders know they're not getting a quarterback this year, so they got to grab one of these QBs, you know, that are available right now, you know, likely one of the aging QBs for like a 1 or 2 year bridge, you know, whether that be Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins or anybody else, you know, a Joe Flacco or something. That's what they would have to look at doing. If you wait till draft day to do so, a lot of those names are off the board, and then you're going, okay, well, so we're gonna
run it back
with what we had? You know, we're going to go Geno Smith again or something. Like
I do think if that trade happens, it is before free agency.
It would have to be.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It would have to be for me. Like if I'm the Raiders, it's like this gets done before free agency so I can address my quarterback issue. Or like if you're calling me on draft day, that price has gone way, way, way up because now I'm going to be in quarterback hell again this year.
Yeah.
Because of this trade. So now you got to sweeten that even more by adding in something, whether it's more picks or a certain player on either side of the ball that they want, something like that.
Yeah, and obviously next week when we go over our Raiders rebuild, this is going to be a possibility for us to talk about, and it is going to be something that we do talk about, the pros and cons of that, but we still have to build out that plan for us
Yeah.
here at the moment, so it's not something that we're going to do here at this moment, but it is an idea. Obviously, the meat and potatoes for us from what we were really going to talk about was the upcoming free agency, because there's not a lot that we can really discuss here for the combine other than it's here, players are there. There's no real controversy of a player not getting invited to the combine this year that I believe. I know I have the players that I'm going to be kind of watching their day essentially, but other than
Mhm.
that, I'm not going to be sitting back going like, oh, like the da 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 da. But the meat and potatoes is kind of the free agency of this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
obviously, free agency opens up. I think it's 2 or 3 weeks after the combine. You're starting to see a handful of players start to be cut here. I know the combine week is when you start to see a lot more players get the axe before we enter free agency.
Yeah.
I know the franchise tag window is officially open, but for this week and maybe a little bit of next week, we're going to be talking about some of the top free agents. We're more focusing on the offensive side of the ball this week and kind of
Mhm.
maybe looking at some of these players and where we see some of the fits just off of the top of our head. Like, again, we haven't really gone through and been like, oh, like this would be the perfect spot for some of these offensive free agents. Just kind of off the top of the noggin going, this is where I think a fit would be really, really good. And so obviously we're going to
Yeah.
go through. Oh,
Yeah, almost like our own little mini silly season is what
yeah.
we're doing here. Just flying by the seat of our pants, trying to figure out where we think these guys might possibly land, or in some cases, depending on the position and the player, it might be somebody like for myself where I'm like, I want this guy to land with my team specifically, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so jumping into it, we're not going to have all of the free agents that are out there here at the moment. That would take way too long. We just kind of have notes of players that we think are interesting or intriguing enough to the point where we can see where they're going to go.
Yeah.
Starting with the quarterbacks, we have 4 guys on our list here. Daniel Jones, for myself, I think he's re-signing with the Colts. I think Daniel Jones looked at this and went, you know what? I had a really good year. I fit really well into that Shane Steichen offense. I got
Mhm.
hurt, and so I think both teams are going to sit back and go, you know what? Indiana Jones, let's get him on a contract. You know what? He can be the best quarterback in Indiana for maybe 2 more years. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the same thing with Daniel Jones. The best thing for both parties would be to bring him back. Obviously, with that injury, I don't think it'll be a lucrative or long-term deal. It'll sort of be another bridge deal where it's like, okay, stay
One or
healthy
two
and prove
year.
that that was real, and then we will talk about doing more long-term extension or something.
Yeah, I think if Daniel Jones does resign with the Colts, it's probably like a 2 year deal, 30 million a year type situation where he's gonna get paid because of
Exactly.
what he did this season, but it's not going to be something where it's like, oh man, like he get money. It's like, you know, let's just say it's like a $70 million deal over 2 years, certain amount of guarantees and that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
Aaron Rodgers, this is a tricky one because I think he's just gonna retire, to be honest with you. I don't think he's gonna go back with the Steelers. I think
No.
they've kind of sat back and said, we're done with this situation. I think he's just gonna kind of retire this season, and then there's gonna be a quarterback injury that happens throughout the year, and there's gonna be a team that goes, Daddy Aaron, please help.
Yeah, I think that's very possible. I really only see three options at the outset here for him. And yeah, one is to retire if he doesn't get anything. I don't think the Steelers are all the way out on him yet. I hope they are because I didn't enjoy the Aaron Rodgers project. It didn't really work. It didn't change much. Um, the other one that I've seen a lot of though, and seeing it be possible, is the Brett Favre route and going to the Minnesota Vikings. because they have a lot of weapons there, and JJ McCarthy struggled, and so very, very possible we see something like that. And he's even expressed that that is a maybe, and so that is one that I could see. But those are really it, roll a dice, and we'll see which one he ends up doing, basically.
Yeah, I don't know if he is going to go to the Vikings. I think the Vikings are sitting back going, we might bring in like a Kyler Murray to try to do something here. I think they're just going to roll with JJ. I really do. I think they're going to sit back and say, hey, he was injured a bunch last year. That was his first year technically starting as a pro. Let's give it one more season here just to see if Kevin O'Connell can work his QB magic. Yeah. Next up is Kirk Cousins, who got released by the Falcons. I'm sure you can see in our notes the teams that I've just added to where I think they're going to go. Feel free to, look at the list and add players for where you will. I think Kirk Cousins is going to re-sign in Atlanta because Michael Penix Jr. is injured and you don't know the health status of what he is going to be. But at the same point, new head coach Kevin Stefanski also has a really good working relationship with Kirk Cousins. I think it's going to be a situation where it's like, man, this team is owing you all this money anyways. We're releasing you. We'll bring you on a much shorter deal or a much cheaper deal here just to kind of give us this little bit of extra help this season. And I think Cousins, he likes Atlanta. Obviously, he chose to go down there, knows the head coach, knows the play caller. And it's one of those things where it's like, you guys are already paying me, so you're going to give me maybe not the longevity that I want or the guarantees, but I'm already here, so why not just stick around?
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't think of that. I could definitely see him just re-upping with Atlanta on a more team-friendly deal since he's already still going to get paid that guaranteed money. I could also see Kirk Cousins playing the long game this free agency and just going, I'm going to see where the chips fall. I want to see what the Jets do. I want to see what the Cardinals do with Kyler Murray. I want to see what the Raiders do with that first overall pick and just sort of wait it out because there are some other good offensive play callers, in the new head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders that Kirk Cousins could potentially shine in a system like that if he has proper offensive line protection. And so I think Kirk will play it slower, more likely, and just wait and see where all the chips fall and go, okay, well, these are the teams that need quarterbacks. That's the team I'm willing to play for other than Atlanta. Let's see what they offer me. And if not, then yeah, it ends up just being back up in Atlanta until Michael Penix gets injured or can't get the job done.
I could also very much see Kirk Cousins re-signing with Minnesota as well. Like I think that could be a real strong possibility of where he just gets up and goes, you know what? Probably shouldn't have left. Kevin O'Connell's a great head coach. I'll go do that and take over for JJ and we'll go try to win a Super Bowl. As funny as that sounds. Next up on our list is Malik Willis, the backup quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. This is going to be a guy that's going to get, one of those kind of recreation quarterback type money where it's going to be a team's looking at him and goes, hey, could this be our Daniel Jones? Could this be our Sam Darnold type situation? Because he was a quarterback that was put into a bad situation when he was drafted. He's grown and developed. We saw how he's played over these last 2 years when you saw Jordan Love go down to injury. And he's probably going to get overpaid by a really, really bad team. And with new head coach down in Miami already having a connection with Malik Willis from his time in Green Bay, I forget his name. Obviously, Green Bay coach I try not to think about. I think he's going to go to the Dolphins, man. I think this is a situation where the Tua experiment's over. The Dolphins are going to be in complete shambles the next couple of seasons. So this is one of those moves where I look at it and go, it's kind of a win-win. You either get a really good starting quarterback going into the future, or he's not the guy, and you have the ability to put yourself in a spot to draft who could be the guy, essentially.
Yeah, I think this is the most likely landing spot for Malik Willis as well. It fits with what that offense is going to be. He's got that mobility. He's got that decision making to throw the ball away instead of get hit in the head. unlike Tua. I will say that Malik Willis is one of the quarterbacks that if Pittsburgh opts to not be going with Will Howard this year, that I would not be opposed to seeing Malik Willis come in because I think he would really thrive in a Mike McCarthy called offense. You know, that sort of style. If they can get an extra playmaker to go along with DK Metcalf and the running backs, tight ends that we got, I think Malik Willis would be a really good fit in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think that could be an intriguing option for the Steelers as well. I just sit back and I go, man, I just feel like Jeff Hafley, the new head coach of the Dolphins, is just going to go, I know this guy. I've seen him in practice. I've had to scheme against him in practice. So let's just bring him in and see if he can be the guy truly in the NFL. Now jumping over to our running back section, really kind of 5 running backs that you kind of talk about here. Frankly, I only view 3 of them as being really high up guys, and I think those 3 guys should be the guys that we're talking about. Obviously, we know Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, and Kenneth Walker are the big names in this one. Kenneth Walker, I think, ultimately gets a deal done in Seattle, but there's been some chatter, man, this last week where it's, you know, Seattle's not going to use the franchise tag on him. They don't have that 5th-year option. If they can't get a deal done before free agency, he's gonna go somewhere else. And I think I'm not 100% sure where he's gonna go, but man, I feel like a team like the Chiefs would just jump in and be like, hey, we're not gonna give you the option, like the amount of money that you're gonna potentially trying to garner. But like,
No.
we'll do you want to go for another Super Bowl run? Do you want to play with the best quarterback in the NFL type thing? Even then, right now, I'm kind of sitting back going like, the Chiefs were kind of my initial one, but I don't know if they would want to spend on a guy like Kenneth Walker, who's really only just I run football straight down middle, as
Yeah.
he's not really a good pass blocker. He's not really a good receiving back. So I would need to think about that one.
Yeah, and that's the big one. He's not really a great pass blocker. And I think what's holding up the deal in Seattle right now is he's basically going, look, Zach Charbonnet went down, and look at the numbers I was putting up.
Yeah.
I need to be RB1. I don't want to split carries with Zach Charbonnet. Fine, if it's a passing play and you want him out there blocking, whatever. But if it's a run play or an outlet where I could be getting a pass in the flat, I need to be the guy that's getting those reps because look at what I did for you. And I think that's really what's holding up this team right now. Others that I could see Kenneth Walker going to would be the Cardinals, maybe. They've been having some issues with James Conner injuries, and Trey Benson has not really unlocked
also
all
had
that talent that we
his
thought he was going to have.
injury issues as well.
Exactly. Like they went through, I think, 5 running backs this year throughout the season, the Cardinals. And so Kenneth Walker, I think, would be a really good fit in Arizona. But other than that, yeah, it's sort of a wait and see. You know, there's other teams I think he would be really good with, but they've already kind of got that RB1. Like, I could see him being really good in like a Colts offense with that Shane Steichen called offense, but you already got Jonathan Taylor. You don't need Kenneth Walker. You know, things like that. Depending on what happens in Pittsburgh, you know, if we don't get Kenneth Gainwell back, and if Jalen Warren opts that he's, you know, not, you know, or Mike McCarthy's like, Jalen Warren's not big enough to be my back, I could see Kenneth Walker being a Pittsburgh Steeler because he's got that north-south mentality, just run straight ahead, which is what, you know, typically happens in Pittsburgh. So there are some options out there, but it's tough sledding. You know, you're likely gonna have to go somewhere else where you're splitting those carries. So I do think he lands right back with the Seahawks.
Yeah, as do I. Like, I think at the end of the day, Seattle's going to sit him down and say, listen, we just went on this historical run. We want you to stay with us. We're not going to be able to give you maybe that money that you're expecting, this, and that, because we have so many other weapons. If you take that little bit of a hometown discount, that means we get to keep JSN. That means we get to keep ... And I think he will ultimately come back. The next running back here, and I think probably the best running back in this free agency class, is Brees Hall. I talked about the
Yep.
Chiefs being an option for Kenneth Walker. I think Brees Hall to the Chiefs is one of those things where I sit back and I go, I feel like this is a match made in heaven. I've
Mhm.
been mocking the idea of putting Jeremiah Love to the Chiefs at pick number 10 in the NFL draft. I think that's going to be a little bit trickier as the season kind of progresses, like draft season progresses. I think the
Mhm.
Chiefs are just going to look at this and say, "Hey, we'll take Brees Hall away from the Jets." I think the Jets could be a bunch of penises about it and franchise tag Brees Hall. And I think if that's the case, Brees Hall is just going to say, I'm just trade me, or I'm just going to sit because I'm not playing another season with this Jets organization. It's one of those
Yeah.
things where I think that relationship is done. If he does hit the open market, I think Hall to the Chiefs is a likely move.
Yeah, I think so too. The other team, like I think he needs to go to the Bears myself because I think having him in a Ben Johnson offense would just be so unstoppable. Like I would like the Bears to try to compete with the Chiefs and take him away from there if they could. But yeah, those are kind of the two teams I see Brees Hall possibly landing with. And you're right, if the Jets decide to tag him, I think he sits as well.
Yeah. Now, I would love Brees Hall to the Bears. Like if you listen to our podcast for basically from week 1 to week 8, basically the trade deadline episode, I was going, polls, do the thing, trade for him. I
Hmm.
would love Brees Hall on the Bears. I just don't know if the Bears are potentially going to go down that route. I think if they are going to sign a running back this offseason, it's probably going to be Travis Etienne. This is another guy that kind of fits in that similar mold to Brees Hall, but is maybe just not as that level of a Brees Hall.
Yeah.
Uh, he's going to be cheaper, which is the thing that the Bears need. But the other big thing here with the Bears when it comes to the running back game is DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai were a really good duo. They fit well into that Ben Johnson offense and they worked well together. To me, I'm sitting back as much as I would love to see, the Bears go out and get an upgrade at that running back spot. I I don't think they do it in this free agency class. I think Travis Etienne is likely gonna return to the Jags, but I
Yeah.
think the Bears, if he does hit the open market and the Bears do look to add a running back, the Bears are probably the most likely destination for ATN.
Yeah, if he does hit the open market, then I think that the Bears are most likely. I could also see the Saints if they opt to not go after like a Jeremiah Love in the draft. I could see the Saints going, "Hey, look, let's bring in the future behind Alvin Kamara." But I also believe he's just going to re-sign with the Jags. The Jags would be foolish to let Travis Etienne walk away because he's really been the catalyst for allowing this offense to open up and become more of a passing offense because of what ETN can do. So letting him go and you have to find that replacement immediately. Like only way the Jags let ETN go is if they're a front runner to land a guy like a Brees Hall or a Kenneth Walker already.
Well, and here's the other thing. The only reason why I think there is the possibility of ATN kind of getting out of Jacksonville is because Liam Cohen started to utilize some of the other backs on the roster more often than ATN. It felt like ATN was just not a Liam Cohen running back, essentially, where it was
Mhm.
you're just kind of sitting back going like, man, it just felt like that fit wasn't really there, and the two just didn't really mesh well. Like it was kind of like you know how like when we build our Madden
Mhm.
franchises, your running backs are very much just north south go down. Mine are very much the I am trying to find that Brees Hall type guy, and it felt like Liam Cohen is maybe more of just the north south as opposed to the more kind of like I'm gonna do three tricks all at once type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. It also felt a little bit to me with the ETN usage that it was almost like he was on a pitch count essentially, like
Yeah,
he had that bad injury the year before and they were like as soon as he went down our season collapsed, so we need to preserve ETN through the year, and the way to do that is to control his reps.
Yeah.
Utilize the other backs we have so he's not taking as many hits. He's not as good in the north-south, so we're not going to use him when it's those plays. That's sort of more what it felt like to me, and that's just it's going to be Travis Etienne has to be buying into that if he's going to stay in Jacksonville.
100%. The other two guys that we kind of had on here is Javonte Williams and then Rico Dowdle. I think Williams ends up re-signing with Dallas. I think Dowdle will be just kind of one of those interesting ones where he doesn't end up getting signed for like the first month of free agency, and then a team will bring him in on a much shorter contract. Moving over to the wide receivers, obviously George Pickens is likely going to receive the franchise tag, so he's going to stay in Dallas. I like Alec Pierce over to the Titans. This is a team that needs playmakers for Cam Ward, and with all the rumors that are going around that the Titans are going to choose a defensive player with their first pick in this year's class, as opposed to getting a cheap weapon for Cam
the
Ward.
Titans have to be incredibly active in getting offensive playmakers in this free agency, because you're not going to get enough during the draft no matter what. Even if you take one in that first round, you're not going to get enough of them throughout to fill that roster out. So you have to take some of these offensive weapons in free agency, and Alec Pierce would be a great option for that fringe wide receiver one.
Yeah, and you know what? Alec Pierce is someone that I look at and I will sit back and say he's someone that could be a wide receiver one on a team like the Titans. I think for most teams he's a wide receiver two that has that solid. But if you want to unlock Cam Ward, this is one of those moves where I go, you need to kind of set this in motion because he has no one. He has no one in Cam Ward. Get him Alec Pierce. This was a guy that was really, really good in that Colts offense this season. He kind of became the number one wide receiver as opposed to Michael Pittman Jr. So I really like the idea of Pierce going to the Titans.
Yeah.
Who do you think next?
Well, Mike Evans is the next one on the list here, and honestly, I don't see him going somewhere else. I really do think he'll just end up staying with the Bucs here. He's been a lifelong Buck. Why would he go anywhere else? Unless for some reason they don't want him, which I don't see happening. The only other thing I could see happening is him going, look, I want to win a Super Bowl, another Super Bowl. I want to go somewhere. I don't think you guys are going to get it done. And in that case, I think the LA Chargers, honestly. I think the Chargers would be a good fit, catching passes from Justin Herbert, being a wide receiver 2 there, possibly even, depending on what else they have. He wouldn't have to be the focal point like he would in Tampa, though with Emeka Egbuka, the reps are shrinking in Tampa Bay. So I do think Mike Evans just stays in Tampa or even retires if he doesn't get that option to play in Tampa anymore. That's all I could really see happening there.
Yeah, I know Mike Evans is going to be testing the free agency market this year. That's already kind of been announced. It's not saying that he won't end up back with the Bucs. The last time that Mike Evans was in this situation, the same thing happened where it was Mike Evans is going to test free agency, and then it was like the third or fourth day of free agency. He's like, I'm re-signing with the Bucs. Everything else here looks yucky and poopy. I think Evans is going to test free agency. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to be a team that says, hey, if you want to get that championship, come play here in Buffalo, be the number one receiver for Josh Allen. We need someone like that. Joe Brady, new head coach, new offensive mind. Well, it's not the new offensive mind, but it's one of those things where I think the pairing could be a really, really solid fit. I think the Chargers might have a little bit too much of that crowded wide receiver room. Again, I say crowded, but it's one of those things where Mike Evans still wants to kind of keep that streak going with the 1,000 yards and kind of. I think that might have broken this year, but
it did.
Yeah,
he didn't make it back in time. But and I had thought of the Bills too, but just at his age and with the ankle and lower leg injuries, I think he would be hesitant to play anywhere that's going to start getting cold and slippery too early in the season. Because I also had thought, the Chiefs, the Chiefs would double down on someone like Mike Evans because they're like, well, he's a bona fide 1,000-yard guy. We know he's going to be a surefire target for Patrick Mahomes. And so that was another one. But it's why I landed on the Chargers, because I'm like, I think he's going to choose somewhere either warm weather or with a dome.
Yeah, which would be interesting to see where he goes. Again, I think both of us just look at it and just go, we think he's going to retire a buck, because guys like this to stay in one place for their entire career doesn't happen terribly often anymore. And I think Mike would like to just kind of have that just be the one place he plays for his entirety. Next guy, I want to talk about Wan'Dale Robinson. I obviously coming from the Giants, and after Malik Neighbors went down, Wan'Dale Robinson quietly became that team's number one and actually played pretty good football as that team's number one receiver for Jackson Dart and company. I think a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson is sneakily going to end up going to the Raiders, because I don't think the Giants are going to re-sign him, because I think he's going to command maybe a little bit too much money. We know the Raiders, they need some more wide receiver help. They have the fourth most cap space in the NFL right now. If you have a guy like Fernando Mendoza entering your team, you don't have any wide receivers here at the moment. None that gives me any sort of confidence here at the moment. So I look at the Raiders, I go, you bring in Wan'Dale Robinson. He can be your number one receiver for this season, but you also have Brock Bowers, you have Michael Mayer from your tight end spot, you have Ashton Genty. So you're giving your young quarterback some weapons to throw the ball to. Now, I think that should be the only offensive playmaker that they go after this free agency. The rest should just be O-line, 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 and guess what? Another O-lineman. But I think you do need to give your quarterback someone from the wide receiver standpoint that he can reliably trust. And I think Robinson would be someone.
Yeah. And I mean, I hadn't put a thought into Wan'Dale Robinson myself either, but the Raiders seem like a logical landing spot for him here. You know, there's a handful of other teams maybe. I could see him re-upping with the Giants as well. It's a very possible thing. But yeah, the Raiders, they need those offensive weapons. I could also see Robinson being sort of I'm going to fill the role that somebody else has left. You know, Alec Pierce leaves the Colts, Robinson goes to the Colts. That sort of thing happening.
Yeah. This is one of those players that I don't think it's going to command like an insane amount of money, but it's still going to be a decent looking deal where it's like, oh, like, damn, like homie got paid, like good for him.
Rashid Shaheed is one that I'd like to talk about, because that's one that I'm quite interested in myself as well. I would love to see him come to Pittsburgh. I was pushing for the Steelers to trade for him at the deadline before the Seahawks managed to nab him. I would be surprised if the Seahawks don't try to get that deal done and keep him there, because he was a very formidable number 2 option behind JSN, and he was really good in the return game as well when needed. So I think the Seahawks will do everything in their power to keep Rashid Shaheed, but I would love to see him come to Pittsburgh and be the wide receiver 2 there.
Yeah, I think Shaheed is probably going to end up re-signing with the Seahawks on like a 1 or a 2-year deal, just because he is such that prolific returner that has wide receiver upside. Like you saw him in the playoffs making a handful of really good passes, and it's one of those things where, you know, you have JSN as your number 1, you have Cooper Kupp as your number 2, and then Shaheed is kind of that, you know, change of pace wide receiver where it's like, okay, we've been doing a lot of this, and this, and it's I don't think this defense is quite ready for just the over the top, because they're so used to dealing with the kind of, you know, short passes for JSN and Cooper Kupp that they just kind of make stuff happen and just go, you're just going to run straight down the field. Oh, look, it's an 80-yard touchdown. Yay, us. And yeah, I think it would be an interesting option for the Steelers. That's one of those ones I don't really love for them, just because I don't think he's a wide receiver 2. I know in the future we will be doing a similar situation for both the Bears and the Steelers, kind of doing that very deep dive similar to what we're doing with the Raiders next week. But yeah, I think Shaheed is probably a Seahawk. I would be
Yeah.
interested to see what the Steelers would do with him because, in the past when they've kind of gone after some of those guys, they've hasn't quite worked out.
Yep.
The other big guy that I want to kind of look at here is Tyreek Hill. Obviously, he was released from the Miami Dolphins this week. This is a tough one because my instant gut reaction just says, just go back to the Chiefs. But however, with that, I look at that and I go, do the Chiefs want Tyreek Hill back? Because he's coming off of a horrific leg injury. So you look at that and you go, well, what does Tyreek offer us that we don't already have? Because the biggest thing with Tyreek for years and years was he was just simply faster than anyone. You get him to just run a post route and he's going to outrun everyone. You put the ball in his hand in some open space and he just outruns everyone. The speed is likely going to be drastically down, not just because of the injury, but due to age as well. I'm pretty sure he's going to be 33 at the start of next season. But then the other headache of, do we want all the legal trouble that comes with Tyreek Hill? We already have one receiver that's being sued right now and who has either spent time in jail or is going to be spending time in jail for about 30 days. Do we really want to add more chaos to that wide receiver room? So I have no idea where Tyreek Hill is ultimately going to land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think the Chiefs are a likely spot just because of the familiarity. And I'm sure during the interview process, it would be like look, you're not the guy you were 5 years ago. And so this isn't going to be the same relationship. You're not going to get the same amount of yards, but you're not going to do that anywhere. The other two teams I think we see Tyreek Hill play with are the Raiders. If the Chiefs do knock him back, going, okay, well, I'm going to play against you twice a year then. And the Raiders need somebody with that talent. And the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens, I could see going after a guy like Tyreek Hill just because they just haven't quite got it all together at the wide receiver position yet. And they got to keep throwing darts at the board till they find that guy. And maybe Tyreek Hill helps them get over that hump.
Yeah. I don't know if the Raiders would do it just because Brady kind of looks at that and goes, you are kind of a little bit of a nutcase, and I'm not ready to have that here for this young kid, and there's too many distractions in Vegas.
Yes.
And
no, I feel that.
With the Ravens, I don't know if Tyreek Hill fits that Ben Johnson offense that Declan Doyle is going to be running. Because again, when it comes to the Ravens, that is Ben Johnson's offense that's going to be out there. Now it's going to have some tweaks with Declan Doyle, but it's one of those things where that's going to be a lot of the influence we see with that Ravens team. So, I just don't know if that fits into that offense. But it's just one of those ones where Hill's probably not going to sign with the team for like the first until after the draft.
Yeah.
And so it's
I agree with that. He is going to wait.
Moving over to the tight ends now, because again, there's other, unless you want to talk about one more guy.
Yeah, there was one more wide receiver I want to talk about because I'm fairly certain where he's going to land, and that's Romeo Doubs. Because we talked about the Buffalo Bills needing a wide receiver.
Yeah,
I think Romeo Doubs would be an excellent fit in this offense, a great weapon for Josh Allen, and he already has the familiarity playing in a cold, hostile environment. And so I think he would be an excellent addition to the Buffalo Bills and would immediately take some of the pressure off of Brandon Beane finding that offensive playmaker.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I've already heard some rumors around that one basically saying that he looks like he could be making his way over to the Bills, so we'll just kind of have to sit back and see ultimately where that one goes. Yeah. To the tight ends, there's really 3 tight ends that are coming out this year. Isaiah Likely from the Ravens, Kyle Pitts from the Falcons, and then David Njoku. I think all 3 guys are going to be finding new homes this year. I really, really do. I think a guy like Isaiah Likely, I think he's going to end up finding his way over to a team like the Broncos, We knew the Broncos last year. I felt that if Colson Loveland ended up falling to the Broncos pick, wherever they
Mhm.
were, that was going to be a match made in heaven, because it felt like Colson Loveland was kind of like a Sean Payton type tight end. I'm so happy he didn't go to the Broncos.
Yep.
But Isaiah Likely, I feel like, is one of those guys where the Broncos just need more pass catches, man, because the guys that they have are good, but no one is kind of at that moment where I feel confident that they can take that next step and really turn this offense into like a Super Bowl juggernaut type thing.
Yeah, this will be a big loss for the Ravens too, because Mark Andrews isn't getting any younger. Isaiah Likely was the successor to that, and to let him walk away would be a huge mistake, and a great pickup for the Broncos. Yeah, that would be one of the front runners I could see him landing with too. I could also see him, going to the Chiefs, being, handed the reins and going, look, you were the successor for Mark Andrews. Now you get to be the successor for Travis Kelce, because he's probably only got one more year left, and then you will take over that mantle. So, but the Broncos are the best fit because, like you said, Isaiah Likely feels like a Sean Payton kind of tight end.
We talked about the successor for Travis Kelce. I think Travis Kelce is going to retire. I really, really do. I think the Chiefs get Kyle Pitts. Kyle
Yeah.
Pitts is kind of that Tony Gonzalez type tight end. We know Tony Gonzalez had a great career with the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are going to look at Kyle Pitts and say, "Hey, you know how good Patrick Mahomes is? You know how good Andy Reid is? You know how
Mhm.
good this offense is at setting up tight ends? You are one of the most gifted athletic tight ends that has ever entered the NFL. Come to the Chiefs and play with Mahomes." I think he immediately looks at that and goes, "Yeah, I'm doing that."
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I do expect the Falcons to make a hard push to make sure he stays in Atlanta. And I wouldn't be shocked to see that happen. Like it just give them one more shot to see if they can get him that quarterback. Another one would be another great quarterback to play with, and that's the Bengals. I could see him going to the Bengals, play with Joe Burrow. That would be a big one as well for me.
Yeah, I just look at the Falcons not having as much money. They only have about 25 million in cap
Yeah,
space, so but yeah,
definitely. Um,
continue.
Yeah, the only other tight end we have on this list is David Njoku, and yeah, it's a foregone conclusion. I don't see him going back to the Browns at all.
He's already
And
stated on social media that
exactly,
it's goodbye.
yeah. And so if Kyle Pitts does move on, I think the logical landing point for Njoku would probably be the Falcons and just going with Kevin Stefanski, where they know each other very well. And, I think Stefanski would look at that and go, well, I know I've got a reliable weapon. And Njoku goes, I know I'm going to get the options. The other team I think we see him in discussions with is the New York Giants. Because Njoku is a great pass blocker as well as pass catcher. That would be an excellent addition to both the pass game and the run game, because he will be able to open up holes for Cam Scatterbo. He'll be great at blocking for Jackson Dart, and he'll be another outlet sort of option for Jackson Dart, just over the middle of the field, which we've seen Njoku do time and time again, where it's, quarterback's in trouble, just dump it off to him. He's going to get us 3 to 9 yards, and we're safe.
I actually like the idea of the Giants more than the Falcons, mainly because I think Njoku maybe just wants to have that hard split from that Browns. Because again, if he just goes with Stefanski, it's basically just saying, I'm going to do this. I think he might just want to have that hard split and say, listen,
Yeah.
I've served my time here. I'm not going to do any more of that. And I'm just going to find my way onto a new roster that kind of gets to show me out in a little bit of a different way. And I actually really like the idea of the Giants on that one. But yeah, those are our tight ends for this one. When it comes to the offensive tackles, there's a little bit more than what we have here, but the only kind of guys that we have really of note. Braden Smith coming in from the Colts. this is one of those guys where I look at a team like the Raiders where you need offensive linemen.
Yeah.
And the tackle class this year in the draft is solid, but if you're the Raiders, you're not going to be spending your first overall pick on an offensive lineman unless you trade back. But
Mhm.
I think this is a guy who's going to be able to be a solid right tackle for the Raiders because he is a right tackle. The Raiders do have Colton Miller, who is their left tackle, but he missed a bunch of time this season. So getting the bookend on the opposite side, I think this would be another good move here for the Raiders. And I've already stated it that I think the Raiders need to spend big free agency money on building up that offensive line. I've stated that I think if you get 3 starters, new starters in free agency, and then you draft another guy in, let's say, the second round, that really
Yeah.
sets up Fernando Mendoza in a wildly good spot.
It has to be that has to be what the Raiders do. They honestly, for me, I look at it and go, you got to sign an offensive lineman of each key position, a tackle, a guard, and a center,
Yep.
if you can, and then still draft another on top of that.
Yes.
Is what I think they need to do. So yeah, that I think the Raiders will probably throw the most money at Braden Smith, and so that is probably where he will end up landing for sure.
Then we have Rasheed Walker, the left tackle from the Packers. This is going to be kind of one of those interesting ones because just looking at the amount of cap space that the Packers have, they don't really have a ton. Right now, they're in the red here at the moment, so they're going to have to find some space. Again, teams finding ways to get back into the green is not something very difficult. I know the Bears are a team that's in the green, and they can find a way to get themselves with $56 million in cap space before free agency starts. Like, you can do a lot of things to get yourself in a really good position. And so I know that the Packers would probably like to try to keep this guy. He's been really, really solid. I feel like he's probably going to get thrown a bag by other teams. He's not a candidate that I look at and go, this is someone that you hit the franchise tag on, because then you're paying this guy a lot of money for someone who's definitely not deserving of franchise tag money from the tackle spot. Who would you be thinking here?
I think the Texans. They still need to replace. Oh God, I'm blanking on the name. They traded him to the Commanders last year, but I think the Texans are a prime spot for Rasheed Walker. They need to get that left tackle in place and start building that offensive line properly, so that C.J. Stroud doesn't feel like he has 1.2 seconds to throw the ball every time.
Yeah, no, looking back at that, I think that is a really solid thing, and I think the Texans should, like the Raiders, spend all the money that they can on O-line and then draft O-linemen, because as we see, when you have a really bad O-line, it makes trying to play the position of quarterback impossible. Moving over to our guard spot, we really only have 3 guards. Funny enough, 2 of them happen to be from the Cleveland Browns. That being Joel Bitonio and then Wyatt Teller. And then the other guard that we have is Elijah Vera Tucker from the Jets. Bitonio, I think the the Browns are going to end up re-signing one of these 2 guys. The Raiders have all 5 of their starting offensive linemen hitting the free agency market. That's just simply unacceptable. You need to keep some level of consistency in front of you. I think the Raiders will sign one of these 2 guys, whether it's Bitonio or Teller. Honestly, it's flip a coin of who they like more. It's either going to be who's the younger, who's going to be a little bit cheaper. I think one of those guys ends up hitting the open market, one ends up staying with the Browns. I'm just not entirely sure which one it is yet.
Yeah, I think Wyatt Teller's the one that stays with Browns myself, because I don't think they're going to be able to afford the price tag for Joel Bitonio. He's going to garner a little bit more money, in my opinion. I think Bitonio lands with the Chiefs myself to finally replace Joe Thuney, who they lost to the Bears. And so that's what I think we're going to see happen with Bitonio and Teller for the Browns.
Yeah, that would be a pretty interesting spot to see the Chiefs go. Now, I will say the Chiefs are in the red here at the moment, but again, cap space, you can kind of get all that stuff worked out. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we've given them a couple of free agents here that are going to garner some money, but I don't necessarily agree with or disagree with that one as well. I think, you know, Joel Batonio basically saying, hey, we're going to bring you in on a 1-year deal to kind of be protection. I think if he does ultimately hit the market, I can see a team like the Chargers, who have the third most money in the NFL, basically saying, hey, we need you for 1 year, feller, to help protect Justin Herbert. You're going to be playing with two really, really good offensive linemen. I think if he ultimately does, I think the Chargers are the team that ultimately lands him.
Yeah. Yeah. See, and I think that's going to be Elijah Vera Tucker myself. I think there's going to be a bidding war for Tucker between the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Texans. All three of those teams are going to be vying for him to fill gaps on their O line. And he's probably going to end up getting a little bit more than a lot of us think he's worth. But that's because he's younger and it's a key position. Like that, he's gonna be a sought after guard by those three teams especially.
Now moving over to the only real center worth talking about here, that's Tyler Linderbaum. Now,
Yeah.
the Ravens should not franchise tag him, because the problem with the franchise tag for the O lineman is it takes the top 5 O linemen and it just doesn't break them down for position, going tackle, guard, and center. If you franchise tag Linderbaum, it's like $28 million. I don't know if you're willing to pay that for a center. Now, Linderbaum is probably top 2 center in the NFL. It's kind of him and Creed Humphrey here at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
The Ravens are going to try to keep him, but yeah, he's going to the Chargers if he hits the open market. I can guarantee you for a fact that with the amount of money that the Chargers have, they might be willing to look at him and say, you want $30 million to come protect Justin Herbert up the middle? And he will go, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, they might give him center number 1 money to come over there. But honestly, I think all three of the teams that should be in the running for Linderbaum should be paying him that. And that includes the Ravens. The Ravens would be absolutely foolish to let this guy go. When he got drafted, I was so mad when the Ravens drafted him because I wanted him in Pittsburgh. Thankfully, we ended up getting Zach Frazier, and he has been a great center for where he was drafted. So I'm not too mad anymore, but honestly, it is. Ravens have to do everything they can to keep Linderbaum. If they can't, then the Chargers and the Raiders again, because they need to fill all those O-line positions. If the Raiders could get Linderbaum for the center for Mendoza,
that's huge.
I mean, that is just money right there. You can't ask for anything more to give your first overall rookie center or rookie quarterback at the number 1 center, the top 2 center in the league. Yeah. But it's those 3 teams for me. And the Chargers likely are going to throw just buckets of money at him because they're like, look, we got 2 of the best tackles if we're right. And they go out and grab one of those guards as well. And then you add Linderbaum to that. All of a sudden, what was decimated O-line this season goes into next season, and we're going, oh man, these Chargers are going to be the team to stop in the AFC.
Yeah, and that's just the thing, is that we always have this what if with this Chargers team with Justin Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
As long as that O-line stays healthy, where you have Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater, let's just say it's Elijah Vera Tucker, and then you have Tyler Linderbaum up front, it's okay, you have all the weapons you need out there. It's the only question about that team would be the defense. Is losing Jesse Minter going over to the Raiders going to be that big of a loss? I think it will be a pretty big loss, but can your offense overcome that with just overwhelming scoring, which we've seen from teams like the Chiefs? But yeah, that again, we only really plan to do some of the free agents from the offensive side of the ball here today. I know next week we will definitely be doing on the defensive side of the ball. And yeah, I know there's a lot of trade conversations that are talked about from some of the players. That is also going to be a discussion that we'll likely have next week. But yeah, unless you have anything, buddy, I think that's it for us here on this one.
Yeah, like we said, it's kind of that first slow season right now, so it's just playing around with the silly season. Where are these guys going to land? What's going to happen in the combine? Are we going to see any wild moves at the draft? This is just that fun time of year where it's just spitballing and trying to find what is happening in the NFL between now and the draft release. Like, sure, we're going to have combine stuff, but not everybody's super into the combine like we are when it comes to scouting. And then draft will come up, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fun couple of months coming up.
This is always, I think, for us, some of the most enjoyable content that we get to do, because it's really stretching our, football minds here and things that we would like to
Mhm.
see ultimately happen. And, we're not depressed because we have to watch our teams do very dumb things or in those moments. It's like we basically have the hypotheticals of like, oh, this is going to make me so happy. And then the team does something else. You're like, God damn it. And
Yep.
then, during the regular season, watching your team lose a game, it's like, God damn it, in that moment. So, having those sort of painful situations. But yeah, for Sterling, I'm Brendan saying thank you all very much for watching. Peace.